What's one thing you're secretly dreading about this winter? And what's one thing you're genuinely excited about? While you take a second to think about it, I'm going to introduce myself. Hi, my name is Elijah, but you can call me Lay. Welcome back to A Little Atypical, where we dive into all things wellness, personal development, and lifestyle topics. I like to approach the typical topics from a not so typical perspective, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. So, back to the question of the episode. Maybe you're dreading the early sunsets or cold mornings, but you're genuinely excited about the cozy nights or the holiday gatherings. Or maybe you're dreading the post holiday slump, but looking forward to finally having time to rest. I think this question is so important because it helps us get honest with ourselves about what we're actually feeling instead of just pushing through. And when we can name both the dread and excitement, we can start to build a plan that honors both sides, preparing for the hard parts while leaning into the good parts. So keep that question in mind as we go through today's episode, because everything I'm sharing ties back to that balance, acknowledging the hard stuff, creating space for the good stuff. You know, we've had some really deep episodes lately, and while I love those conversations, I wanted to shift gears for the remaining episodes of the year. I want these next few episodes to be pure vibes, something lighter, something you could just be cozy with as we head deeper into the winter months. So, for today's agenda, we are planning to wrap up the future planning episode series, and what I want to do in this episode is share my personal ins and outs for this season. So think of this as my quote unquote game plan to avoid the winter slump and to actually thrive in the colder months. And whether you're someone who struggles with winter or you just want to be more intentional about how you move through this season, I hope hearing my approach gives you, you know, your own inspiration to create your own game plan, one that's tailored to your specific needs, your patterns, what actually lights you up during the darker months, etc. Honestly, this has been on my mind for a while. If you follow me on TikTok, well, one of my TikToks, you might have seen my post about how excited I was for the colder months to be back, because with that specific post, I was talking about like sweaters and layers and all that cozy fashion because I love it. I live for it. But one of my mutuals commented saying she missed the styling of the season but hated the blues that came with the winter. And that really stuck with me because I've talked about winter blues before on this podcast, so I'm not going to go into all the scientific reasons again, but something I realized is winter blues hits everyone differently. And I don't mean that in a way like, oh, we all have like different reactions to the winter, but more like the point of times. So, for example, I have a friend who specifically hates January. Every time January rolls around, she says it just feels too long, too heavy. And honestly, I get it. This is just my personal observation, but I think people who hate January, it's because the holiday magic is just gone. There is not many celebratory holidays that month if you really think about it. New Year's Eve is the real celebrating day, and New Year's Day is just for recovery and resetting. I think it's the combination of losing something to look forward to every week, like during school times, if you had like class parties in high school, or in general in December, right? If you're in college, your semester ending the first 2 weeks of December. And then also there's just in general for everyone this socializing high, the quality time with people you love, the fun foods, the gifts. And addition to that, in January, there's all this pressure to do your big one for the year ahead, to just do something to be proud of. And I guess that combined with the biological reasons like longer nights, less sunlight, and it being too cold for activities without proper clothing, everything just adds up. For me personally, February hits me harder, and it's so odd because I used to think like growing up it was always about Valentine's Day, but then I realized it's no longer about that or anything like that. I just get really burnt out by then. And I think it's because as soon as my birthday comes around at the end of October, I go into hyper productive mode and burn myself out. I think from mid February until spring officially starts around, I think it's March 20th to the 22nd, it just feels like a final home stretch. Like, if something in my life hasn't shifted by then, whether it's a new opportunity, completing a course, hitting a health milestone, I start to question everything I'm working on, and just all this self doubt creeps in. I think part of the spiral that happens at that time kind of stems from hearing people say, like, oh, their lives did a 180 in 6 months, and by that point I'm approaching that timeline and wondering why my life hasn't. So it's important to know your patterns, like when things hit you the hardest. It can allow you to make an effective game plan to have a better winter season. You need to look for your vibe, list what you're looking forward to in the winter, and know what fuels you and what drains you, and how that disrupts your flow. And that's exactly what I'm going to be sharing today. So grab your favorite cozy drink, pop in your earbuds if you're going on a hot girl walk, or just let this play in the background while you're doing your daily clean. And without further ado, let's dive in. So, first, let's talk about my overall vibe for these winter months. I really want to set intentions for how I want to move through this season, and here's what I came up with. First off, resetting my health and my healing journey. I talked about this already, but I've been on a healing journey since 2023, and as for my health, I've been trying to tackle that since 2022, but I only started seeing like real results for my health, I would say, by the end of 2024. And I realized while some things improved naturally, I realized one thing I did in those times was I was forcing myself to heal before I was ready. And lately I've been getting signs that now is the time to move forward without that mental limbo that's been draining me. So this winter is about leaning into transformation and expanding my capacity to feel deeply and showing up for my healing in ways that I'm actually ready for. And when you're truly healing, you create space for rest, reflection, renewal, which is exactly what winter is meant for. That's the foundation of my vibe this season. Next vibe for winter is basically in small capacities, creating a visibility to set myself up for the springtime. So this one is about overcoming my fear of being seen, which people I respect have pointed out is my biggest obstacle. They believe in my talents and my work ethic, but I need to actually put my work out there for opportunities to find me. Winter gives me the perfect low pressure environment to practice showing up authentically without the rush of spring energy. I can create visibility gradually. Like, in a metaphorical sense, it's like planting seeds under the snow that will bloom once the seasons change. And this way, when spring comes, I'm already positioned and ready. Last but not least, the last intention I have for the winter is moving with discipline while trusting my intuition to guide me. I love this balance because it means having structure without being rigid. Someone said structure is spiritual, and that resonated with me because discipline often gets associated with negative things, but it's actually a form of protection for longevity. It reflects values like trust, commitment, and honest communication. And what's beautiful is that by practicing discipline with yourself, you're also cultivating the qualities you want in relationships with others while strengthening your relationship with yourself. During winter, when energy naturally dips, this approach lets me honor both my commitments and needs. For example, This week, when my energy was depleted, instead of panicking, I just took a spiritual bath. I got my nails done, which left me feeling refreshed enough to tackle everything. Winter teaches us that rest and productivity aren't opposites. They work together when you trust your intuition about what you need. So now that the vibes are set, I want to share 5 things I'm looking forward to in the winter. So, first off is cozy vibes. From clothes to my environment, I want everything to feel warm and comforting. This week I'm recording. I actually have a mall day coming up, and I made a list of things I want to get. Not in a consumerism way, but more like things I'm running out of or I don't have yet. So I want to go to Bath and Body Works for candles and plugins. I have about 3 plugins left, but I don't like the scents as much. So I'll use those for shared spaces and some of the new ones for my personal space. And I don't have any winter candles left, just 2 fruity floral ones that I honestly prefer for spring or summer. Winter is when I prefer their gourmand scents, like the hot cocoa candle, vanilla birch, cinnamon spice vanilla, and there was a scent I liked last year that I had as a plug-in, but I can't remember the name of it. But I feel like I'll know it if I smell it, and I hope they have it. I also want to get 1 winter pajama bottom since I only have 2, but one of them is oversized now, and I love a plush warm PJ pants in the winter. Honestly, there's just nothing better. Second thing, I am updating my skincare and body care routines for the winter. I've added a few new products since I went to Beauty New York. So the first product I added was the Essen Herb Day to Night Routine Program, and the I'm so sorry if I butchered this, but the Demaf Hero, my first hydrating serum with hyaluronic acid. So both of those are K beauty brands, and since I see a dermatologist every 6 months, I have to be cautious about what I use on my face to avoid triggering my acne. And here's the thing, I don't think my dermatologist fully understands the kind of skin finish I'm kind of going after, because I've never been a fan of face makeup. Even when I used to do heavier makeup, I avoided foundation, stuck with concealer, mainly because concealer had a better shade range than BB and CC creams at the time. And I wear even less makeup now due to increased sensitivity for my products, so skincare has been my priority. I used to love the dewy glass skin look, but once I discovered satin skin, that became my goal. It's the perfect balance, not oily or greasy looking, but clearly hydrated with a natural radiance. I'm being intentional about not introducing too many products at this once so I don't trigger a breakout. And I can also see how each one works with my skin. Also, in addition to that, for my birthday, I got a few new products. I've already used the Vino Daily Moisturizing Body Oil, and I'm obsessed. I first heard about it from one of my favorite YouTubers to watch, Alicia Gogan, and I have been waiting to try it since I heard about it because I prefer lightweight oil textures to lotion, but I actually finally have my staple lotion, which is the EOS ones, because they, to me, are the perfect texture and they're very fast drying. I currently have the Jasmine Peach, but I personally think the pomegranate one is the best one. And another body care thing, but I haven't used yet, is the L'Occitane gift set with like almond oil for your shower and body, I think. I have not used that, but I'm so excited to try it. And same goes with the Dream Skin Trio from Laneige. I'm so bad. I pronounce it Laneige. But anyways, I can't wait to incorporate both of those things into my routine, but little by little, so I don't waste products either. Third, I want to dive into hobbies, both brain engaging and more crafty hobbies. So, winter is the perfect time to catch up on reading. I had such a hard time reading regular books while taking courses, maybe because of all the information overload. But lately, I've been also obsessed with things like Sudoku and word searches. I've also been saving word of the day posts from vocab TikTok or vocab talk. I don't know why, I've just been so into words lately, but I've been thinking about getting a crossword book so I can have the entire trio of puzzles going. And overall, there's just something so satisfying about sitting down with a hot drink, working through puzzles. It keeps my mind sharp without the pressure of productivity. Plus, I love that these activities feel intentional and present. Like I'm giving my brain the kind of engagement it craves without overstimulation of scrolling. It's just a little ritual that I have grown to look forward to. Fourth, catching up on shows and romanticizing indoor time without guilt. Okay, we often pressure ourselves to be productive or out doing something, but winter is the perfect season to embrace being inside, cozy, watching your favorite shows without any guilt. I tend to rewatch things throughout the year because it eliminates decision fatigue. One show I've been putting off is an anime I love, Spy Family. I'm already caught up with the manga, so nothing will be completely new. But I've been avoiding it because I originally watched the first season with someone who's no longer in my life, and rewatching it alone brings up those memories. But I realized that watching it with family during our holiday catch up completely changes the experience. It creates a new association and lets me enjoy the show in a fresh way. And honestly, that's what winter is about, reframing experiences without guilt. In other seasons, I just feel so guilty about being a homebody, so I push myself to go out even when I don't want to. But at my core, I genuinely love being home. I've made my space comfortable and intentional enough that I never feel disengaged or bored. There's so much potential in indoor activities, from creative projects to learning a new skill to enjoying just a simple, cozy evening with a good book or a show. Winter gives me permission to fully embrace that without the pressure to be anywhere else. And fifth, winter is the perfect time to create stability. You always hear people say you need to do XYZ to glow up, but honestly, winter creates the best version of yourself because we're designed to build structure for ourselves during the season. I think people enjoy summer because they associate it with freedom and fun, but it's actually the stability you create in the winter that allows for that carefree energy when summer rolls around. Want to take a trip this summer? Winter is the best time to get your research done, plan your itinerary, create a budget, and compile all the resources you need to make that trip happen. Want to take courses to do something different? Winter offers so many New Year's deals because businesses are competing to make you a loyal customer in the first quarter of the year. Take advantage of that. Also, if you want to start a career, many groups offer mentee applications at the end of the year in the winter, so you can have a mentor at the new year. For me specifically, I'm attempting to fix my sleep schedule and upgrading my habits and routines. This is something I've struggled with, but I'm really committed to it this season, which gives us the perfect environment to build on that foundation without the pressure of being on all the time. All right, let's talk about my ins, the things I'm bringing into my life this winter. So, first off, my first in is reminding myself what other people are working on isn't what I need to be working on. So, especially at the end of the year, we get bombarded with productivity content, videos telling us to wake up at whatever time to optimize our morning routines or hustle harder. It's just so easy to get caught up in that cycle and start thinking maybe I should be doing that too. But here's the thing, we have a bad habit of constantly consuming advice that isn't actually what we need advice on. For example, everyone talks about waking up early like it's the ultimate productivity hack. But that's not my problem. I already wake up early naturally. My biggest need is actually learning how to calm my mind racing at night, whether it's good thoughts like ideas and inspiration or negative thoughts like worries and overthinking. The mental restlessness disturbs my sleep quality along with physical discomfort like back pain. That's what needs attention for me, not optimizing my morning routines. But if I keep consuming productivity content about waking up early, I'll waste my time fixing something that isn't broken while ignoring the actual issue. So this winter, I'm being intentional about filtering the advice I consume. Just because something works for someone else doesn't mean it's what I need. And just because everyone's talking about it at the end of the year doesn't mean it applies to my personal journey. I'm learning to recognize the difference between helpful guidance and noise and to trust myself enough to know which is which. Second thing I'm working on is separating myself from what I'm experiencing. So, for example, hating yourself versus hating what you're experiencing are two different things. And this thought hit me when I was with someone and they said they hated themselves. And I truly did not know how to reply in that moment. At one point, that was a relatable thought for me. So I would have been like, yeah, same. But honestly, I think that ended 5 or 6 years ago for me. And it wasn't until that moment I realized how far removed that feeling was for me. Then more evidence for that started compiling in my head because the thing is, it wasn't something I forced. It happened over time. And then I started thinking if I can shift that perspective with something that is arguably one of the hardest but most important things a person can do, what else can I shift? And this matters because when you can't separate yourself from your experiences, everything becomes personal and permanent. A bad day becomes I'm bad. A mistake becomes I'm a failure. A difficult season becomes this is just who I am. But when you create that separation, you give yourself permission to be human, to have hard moments without becoming them, if that makes sense. It opens up space for growth because you're just observing what's happening and deciding how to move through it. When something is how you identify, you are defensive over it. And when I thought about it that way, it made me realize how that opens you up to being more easily triggered, even by things that literally have nothing to do with you. That shift alone has changed how I navigate challenges, relationships, and even my own thoughts. And it's the difference between being trapped in a feeling and being able to witness it, learn from it, and eventually move past it. And this is something that is not easy to get attuned to. It takes some time, it takes some patience, but once you make this your in, it makes life so much easier. And that's what I want to practice more this winter. Third thing, getting better with deadlines slash healing my relationship with them. So this is an aspect of personal growth I'm still working on because self-enforcing deadlines was just something I was never good at. If I started something, I would literally work on it until it's done, which is not a good habit to have. Because then, if you're not able to break things up into milestones, to break things up, you find yourself like taking all your energy into one thing or multiple things at a time and keep giving it and giving it and giving it instead of having like a balanced approach to it. So this is something I'm learning, is to have the ability to break things up into milestones so I don't get so burnt out in the process of whatever I'm doing. Fourth, I'm utilizing more tools and resources, whether it's apps, planners, or systems I want to lean on, to help me instead of trying to do everything manually. So, for example, something cool I recently learned and want to try more of is changing my phone screen color. I haven't tried the gray version yet, but I've tried the red one occasionally. But basically, people said having their phone on red mode helps them sleep more. And if you change it to a gray scale, it reduces the dopamine hits from your phone. So a lot of people keep that on during the day. And I just thought that was so fascinating. And I'm just curious if it would actually work. And my fifth thing that I wanted to mention that I'm focusing on is focusing on supporting my professional and financial goals. So, obviously, this is something I'm constantly working on because in my head, there are kind of levels to it. But this winter is about setting myself up for success in the spring and beyond. What that basically means for me is being intentional about skill building, networking, and creating systems that support long term growth, whether it's finally finishing the courses I've been putting off, updating my portfolio, or researching opportunities that align with my career path. I want to use this season to build more momentum. And in terms of financially, I want to focus on building security before consistent income arrives. So, this focus on financial stability is so important for me because when you're chasing your dream career, it's so easy to get discouraged. The gap between where you are and where you want to be can feel huge, and sometimes without some security, that uncertainty can mess with your confidence. And building financial stability isn't just about the money you currently have or don't have. It's kind of like about giving myself the mental and emotional space to go after opportunities without feeling desperate, to make decisions because I want to rather than because I have to, and to stay confident in myself even when things aren't clear. So, I also think financial stability is learning about good financial habits in general, like investing and like just like the different aspects of financial wellness, financial growth, and all that. So, winter is when I want to build this foundation so that when opportunities do come up, I'm ready to jump at them from a basically a solid place emotionally and not coming from a place of lack. And the final thing, the most obvious thing, of course, I'm going to work on is physical health in general. So I want to prioritize movement, nourishment, and rest in ways that feels good to my body. And just a heads up, I'm going to be talking a bit about weight and eating patterns. So feel free to skip ahead if it's not something you want to hear right now. Also, everything I'm saying will be from the perspective of someone who not only didn't have guidance on healthy eating growing up, but also never really grew up consistently doing sports. So I have no athletic background or foundation, but as an adult is trying to learn how to still be the healthiest version of myself, which means getting out of my comfort zone and mindset with previous things. So, with all that being said, I've been in maintenance for about a year now, when I started my health journey in 2023, I was 170 and I went down to 152 by the end of 2024. And then at the beginning of this year, I did go down to 145, but then I went back up slightly because I didn't give myself time to adjust to my new body weight, if that makes sense. But this year, my weight has been consistently between 152 and 157. And I do want to go back down to the 140s again this winter. So the thing is, I locked down raising my NEAT score. So, the non-exercise activities. But I have trouble including strength training because of my lower back, and I actually got a referral to do physical therapy, and if I can, I will try it. And then after that, I want to gradually add strength training. But also, I want to do some research to find the right type of strength training for me. But I know this won't be successful in general if I don't improve my nutrition. My biggest problem with nutrition as of right now is that homemade food that has been planned out is usually available Sunday through Wednesday at the latest. By Thursday, I rarely have quality food to eat for dinner, and honestly breakfast and like the other meals. But it really sets me up for failure on Fridays and even Saturdays. By Friday, I don't want to cook. The other person I'm living with doesn't want to cook, so we get takeout. Usually we get things that we don't need to finish in one sitting, but it still does hinder my progress, especially when my activity level isn't that high. Like, I say, like, yes, I walk a lot, but how much you burn through walking actually depends on the pace of the walk. So it's actually kind of harder to measure what range of activity you fall into. So I hear a lot of people say it's better to underestimate what you do than overestimate. And obviously, walking has benefits outside of fat loss, which is why I do it so often. But the reality is, if I want to hit my goal, I kind of need to do the uncomfortable things to get out of my comfort zone, which is the obvious what I mentioned, my struggle to start strength training. Mentally, I think my struggle is more about, I just see it as something I have to focus on more for safety reasons, because not being fully present while strength training is harmful. It requires more of a mind-body connection in comparison to cardio, where you can watch videos, read on your Kindle, whatever. And also, it just feels slower. So I would have to have a lot more patience with it. So overall, this winter is about building a sustainable foundation for my physical health, one that honors where my body is at right now while working towards where I want to be. It's not about perfection or drastic changes, but consistency, patience, and just finding what will work for me long term. And I think by addressing the gaps in my nutrition, gradually incorporating strength training, and just being realistic about my challenges, I'm just setting myself up for real lasting progress rather than quick fixes that do not stick. Now, with all that being said, let's talk about my outs, the things I'm leaving behind this winter. So, the first thing I want to leave behind is when I have a thought, like when I hear something or see something, instead of deep diving into it right away, I just want to take note of it. I don't agree with always acting on a thought, because especially when you're someone like me, very easily inspired, you usually sometimes see or hear something and your brain naturally draws a conclusion. Even if it's something more out there that people would ask, how did you even get to that thought? Acting on a thought instantly can be very distracting. Sometimes when I'm trying to do coursework, I hear something that triggers an idea and I instantly pause the video and go search and then end up in a rabbit hole instead of finishing my task that I set out to do. So, with all that being said, I no longer want to just instantly search. I'm going to take note of it, have a notebook next to me, have something next to me, and just revisit that thought while I'm not doing something. Second thing is constantly switching what I'm doing out of the need for newness. So this is something I really want to leave behind because in last week's episode, I did mention challenges and personal curriculums are good for adding a bit of spice to the mundane, but the problem is packing on way too much at the same time. I want to get better at taking things one at a time. For example, when I did the personal curriculum thing in October, because I was struggling to complete my data analytics course, and with everything I added, I would pretend 1 month was enough to finish everything, but it wasn't. I was able to complete learning how to learn, but when November started, I had 3 to 4 modules left for the physiology one. The truth of the matter was I was stalling on doing the Google Analytics course because the other ones were more fun or refreshing. But once I saw something as a way to stand out career-wise, that's when I felt more pressure to engage with it in comparison to the other ones. So November, I ended up keeping my learning the same, and December I want to switch things up and then keep the same thing until February to avoid constant newness, in the sense that it begins to distract me and causes me to be all over the place. Third, I'm leaving behind giving things a higher sense of urgency than I should. So I think I have a tendency to create a false sense of urgency around things that don't actually require it. Like, for example, at the end of October, I got a book from my favorite author, and I realized I didn't jump at reading it like I usually do because I didn't want to disrupt my creative flow. I got it on a Wednesday, and I actually waited to start it until that upcoming Saturday. And as much as I love consuming her work, I also want to acknowledge that there's no reason to create such an urgency to start it and then rush through it. This pattern shows up in different areas of my life too. What I was just saying, I'll see a new course or a trending topic or an opportunity and immediately feel like I have to act on it right now or I'll miss out. But the reality is most things aren't going anywhere. That book will still be there next week. That course will still be available next month. And obviously, unless it says otherwise, but creating artificial pressure, I think I'm actually robbing myself of the ability to engage with things thoughtfully and intentionally. So this winter, I want to practice discernment by asking myself, is this actually urgent or am I just making it feel this way? Because when everything feels urgent, nothing gets the attention it deserves. I want to give myself permission to move at a pace that allows me to truly absorb and appreciate what I'm doing rather than feel like I'm constantly racing to the next thing. Fourth thing I wanted to mention is prioritizing quantity over quality in effort and pursuing unsustainable approaches. So for so long, I've operated under the belief that doing more means achieving more, but that's just not always true. When I spread myself too thin, the quality of everything I do suffers, and I end up burning out instead of making real progress. This winter, I want to focus on doing less, but doing better. So that means choosing 3 main goals, but breaking each one down into 4 specific methods so I can focus on one method per season and give it my full attention without overwhelming myself. Sometimes as people, we make too many goals, and realistically we shouldn't have more goals than we have months in a season or a year. It's also important to recognize we shouldn't try to make a goal that realistically takes a year fit into a month. When we do that, we're setting ourselves up for failure and disappointment. Instead, we just need to be honest about the timeline our goals require and give ourselves the space to work towards them at a sustainable pace. Okay, so fifth, giving energy draining situations too much of my time. So if something or someone is draining me, I need to be better at setting boundaries. This means being more intentional about where I invest my time and attention. It's so easy to get caught up with conversations, situations, or even thought patterns that leave me depleted rather than energized. So whether it's just endless scrolling through content, engaging in conflicts that aren't mine to resolve, or just staying in places where I don't feel valued, I want to recognize these patterns earlier and give myself permission to step away. Setting boundaries is not being selfish. It's about preserving energy that I need to show up for the things and people that actually matter. So this winter, I am choosing to protect my peace and redirect that energy towards things that fuel me rather than drain me. And also just be in favor of my progress. Okay, last but not least, the final thing I'm letting go this winter is waiting for ideal circumstances. Since my word of the year is quote unquote ready, I don't want to keep holding myself back anymore. And I know I mentioned urgency in another point, but what I mean is I don't want to create urgency around things that aren't aligning me with my goals. It's just so ironic. The things we rush toward are often the things that don't matter, but when it comes to what really matters, we constantly wait for everything to be perfect. We allow imperfection in ways that don't serve us. But suddenly we have to have perfectionist tendencies where it matters most. And it's just altogether, it's so odd. We'll rush into impulse purchases or last minute plans without a second thought. But when it comes to applying for that dream job or sharing our creative work, or think about in terms of relationships, we'll tolerate situations that drains us, stay in friendships or dynamics that don't serve us because confronting them feels uncomfortable. But when it comes to reaching out to build meaningful connections or putting ourselves out there authentically, we hold back until we feel ready enough or interesting enough. And is that not insane? We accept the mess in areas that keep us stuck, but demand perfection in the very areas that can move us forward. This winter, I'm done waiting for the quote unquote right time, and I'm ready to start where I am. So there you have it, my ins and outs to avoid the winter funk. I hope this gave you some ideas for how you can create your own game plan for the winter. But before we close out, I want to share what I'm grateful for this week. So in general, I feel like I've been in the most positive headspace I've been in for a while. I think when people say you need rituals/traditions, even if it's just something with yourself, they were truly onto something, because it changes the game for you mentally and energy wise no matter what you're experiencing. Also, that Mamdani won the mayor race for NYC, and I was just telling my friend how spiritually aligned it is, because he's going to be the 111th mayor, aka 111, aka the number that represents new beginnings. So there has just been a lot of new beginning energy this week that I'm recording, and I just find that so good. Now, it's time for the card pull. If card readings are not your thing or not something you personally align with, but you still like other aspects of my content, thank you for listening this far. And be sure to come back next week. Follow the podcast to stay updated on new releases. One thing I decided is I wanted to use the Moonology deck again. And the two cards came out that were just so aligned and so clear that I'm not going to explain how it will connect to everything. But Remember that how it aligns to your life is up for your own interpretation. So the first card we got was the Balsamic Moon, a time for healing. Pulling this card suggests that the past is in the past and a bright future is beckoning. However, before you take your next step, make sure that both you and the situation feel healed. This is not the time to paper over cracks or to simply pretend that everything is okay. Rather, you still need a little more time to heal and soothe both yourself and anyone else in need. Then remind yourself that anything is possible if you believe it. This is also a time to surrender and wait to hear guidance from the universe. Powerful insights can be had if you know that someone or something really isn't good for you. This card is a reminder to surrender. Start to work on your belief in your dreams so you're ready when the time comes. Attune to the moon. When one is healed, all are healed. Additional meanings. It's time to let go of the past. You are about to turn the corner. You need more time to heal. Think about how this situation would look if everyone were healed. The teaching. Patience is required at the time of the Balsamic Moon. It's a time for self-care as you slowly but surely prepare yourself for the new moon, which is just around the corner. No matter which point of the current moon cycle you pull this card, it's a reminder to go a little bit easy on yourself. The time to step into your creative power will come soon enough. Give yourself the time you need. Card 2, New Moon Eclipse, expect powerful change. If you want an affirmation that you can achieve your dreams and get the desired outcome in the situation you're asking about, then this is it. This is a card of beginnings, and there are powerful energies at work. But be prepared. It could be quite a ride, and events now could even be jarring and uncomfortable. However, any new direction you take will almost always lead somewhere better than where you are at the moment. Whatever is happening now is happening for a reason you'll appreciate later on. A new portal is opening up, and all you have to do is have the courage to forget about the past and move through it. You're being put back on the right track. There is nothing to fear. Attune to the moon. Never mind the past. Life evolves every single day. Additional meanings for this card. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. You're being shunted towards your life's purpose. Whatever is happening now is happening for your highest good. This is an important turning point in your life. The teaching. New moon eclipses are among the most exciting astrological events. They herald a complete change of pace. It's as though you're headed in one direction, probably being guided by your ego, and then comes the divine, the goddess or spirit, to turn you instead to face the direction you actually need to go. Regardless of whether or not there's a new moon eclipse happening when you pull this card, it's a powerful affirmation of positive turnabouts. Alright, so that's a wrap. Thank you for tuning into today's episode of A Little Atypical. If you found this helpful, don't forget to follow/subscribe and share this with someone who might need to hear this message. Remember, view the description box where you can find important links such as the one to my website where there's so much more bonus content. Until next time, have a good day, evening, or night, and stay authentically atypical. XO, my loves. Okay, bye.